Happy fall, everyone! Welcome. It's been a while since I've made a book review video, but I haven't really read a lot of books in each month. So like one month maybe I read 2, the next month I read 3. But it is fall now, officially fall, so I've decided that it's time to catch up. And I brought out my pumpkins to join me. I also have another one here, but I don't know where to fit him, so maybe I should fit him here. Good enough. Okay, so let's just jump straight to it because I do have a few books now. So the first book would be The Push by... They vanished. Give me 1 second. Okay, let's do this again. So one of the pumpkins rolled out. He just fell. So he's out of the video because he's injured. So he knows I'm gonna try to make a pumpkin pie later in the season. The Push by Ashley Audrain. I'm so glad I read this book. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. It gave me so much anxiety. Hold on, let me tell you what it's about. So it's about Blythe, and she gets married to Fox, and they have a baby and they name her Violet. But Violet has some odd behavior, and Blythe starts to think that something is seriously wrong with her daughter, and Fox is like, honey, you're just imagining it. And she starts to question her sanity because she does not have this motherly instinct connection to her daughter. But then she has her baby Sam, and she has all that love of a mother towards him, and then something happens. And this is basically what this book is about. This gave me a lot of anxiety. I do have my little journal. See, I said everything Blythe went through gave me anxiety. Fox was a complete asshole. Oh, I gave out some spoilers, so I'm not gonna get into spoilers, but I do really recommend this book. This next book I actually ended up listening on audiobook, and the book is Hide by Christian White, and this is about, it's a horror book, okay, and this is about a hide and seek game. So 14 contestants are invited to an abandoned amusement park, and they have to spend a whole week there and basically don't get caught. It's hide and seek, and if you're the last one standing, you get money. And at the beginning of the book, I was like very into it. I think the setup of them getting to the amusement park, like, it was like good, it was okay. But you do get a little bit introduction to all the characters, but there's 14 of them, so you don't really get a lot out of these characters, and there's only like a certain few that are like main characters, so they're more like flushed out, but then you feel like you don't care about any other characters. And I gave this book a 1 star out of 5 because it was very boring. Okay, so as the days were going on in this competition, it was just boring, and I don't remember if it was like till day 5 or 6 where like shit started going down, but I was still bored. And even after that day, after like shit goes wrong, I was still really bored. I didn't care about the characters. Maybe I only cared about one, but like that was it. Most of the time the characters just hid and waited around, talked, and that's it. Oh, only character I liked was Brandon, sweet guy. Everyone else I didn't care about. Mac being the main character, I didn't care about her. Also, there were diary entries explaining how the monster came to be and how the game was created. It was info dumped through diaries. Cliche, an easy way to just dump info to reader. Barely any action, and the action that was present was dull and non-risk feeling. Can't even remember what/how the book ends now. The book was a waste of time. Beautiful cover, bad story, 1 star. It was actually probably one of the worst books I have read this year. Another bad book that I read was From Below by Darcy Coates. This one was actually very high on my TBR for this read it just came out this year, and I was anticipating it, and let's just say it was also kind of a flop for me. I didn't finish the book, to be honest. Like, I made it to page 229 out of like 400 and something pages. Let me tell you what this is about. So, years ago, the SS Arcadia vanished without a trace. 60 years later, it is found deep beneath the ocean surface. Cove and her crew, I think it's Cove or Cove. I'm gonna say Cove, okay? Cove and her crew are given permission to deep dive and document their exploration into the shipwreck. Something dark and hungry watches from below. Limited oxygen and the ship slowly closing in on them. The team will have to fight to survive and find a way out before it's too late. So at the time I read this book, I was really in the mood for like a water horror book. Oh, this is horror, FYI. And the cover is beautiful, and then it intrigued me, and I was like, yeah, I'm in the mood for a water horror book story, like, you know. So I got it, and I was reading it, and right off the bat, from the beginning, I know the story was set up for disaster, because so crew has like a biologist and a marine biologist, but she's never been in the ocean, and then she has like this tech guy for cameras. I don't remember, but he can't even like be part of exploration because it's malfunctioning. And then she has like the deep diving professional, the only professional in the fucking crew, sorry, in the whole crew. And then you have Cove, but she barely has any actual deep diving experiences, and she's the leader of this crew. And then you have this guy who like barely even got his like certificate to actual deep dive, and he didn't even pass if it weren't for some guy helping him cheat through his test to deep dive. So let me just read what I wrote about this book. Okay, so the book starts off interesting, but it moves at a snail's pace. Barely anything happens. This book has 469 pages, and I only made it to page 229. It took me about a week to get there because of how bored I was. I kept going because I wanted to know why the SS Arcadia sunk. Darcy Coates sets stories up for disaster, so there can be chaos waiting to happen. In all her books, there are always bad character decisions that make me think, obviously something will go wrong. For example, this is not a spoiler because it's like in the very first few pages, or like the first 1 or 2 chapters of the book. For example, the team has to have a deep diving, cave diving certificate to explore the shipwreck. Out of the 5 crew members, only 1 is an expert. There's a super young guy who barely obtained his certificate but cheated to obtain it, and he is going on exploration. Of course, things will go wrong. Cove, or Cove, whatever, who is the leader, knows he is inexperienced, but she doesn't make him stay. So she had the decision to make him stay or go on exploration, and she let him go on exploration. This is not spoilers. This is like the first few chapters of the book, okay? The setup of the story, okay? So she lets him come. Stupid. And also, his name is Aiden, and he's a cook. He's not a diver. He's actually the cook of the crew, but he's going on this deep diving experience. I don't know. Like, do people actually do that on expeditions, or I don't know. Okay, so then we have Vanna is the only professional diver, but she is made to look like she's crazy and likes watching people drown. Cove is, I'm changing up her name a lot. I'm gonna say Cove. Cove is a leader, but barely has any deep diving experience. She has open ocean experience, but little experience for her current job. She makes terrible decisions, like letting Aiden join them, and splits up in the ship. Oh yeah, the typical let's split up, you know, decision in horror stories. There's also a timeline starting 11 days before the sinking of the Arcadia. It was interesting at first, but it's so slow. I can't even read my own handwriting, guys. Oh my god. Days leading up into the sinking of the ship, barely anything happens. It takes pages for there to be action. I made it to 5 days before the shipwreck and I'm still bored. It seems like a creature's like something supernatural lures in the sunken ship, but I can barely remember halfway and I don't think I can continue anytime soon. I'm still curious to see like what exactly happened to the SS Arcadia and why it sunk. So it put me in a really bad reading slump, okay? In a super bad reading slump. The book that took me out of my reading slump was Blood Sugar by Sacha Rothchild. Okay, so this book is about Ruby, and she's described as a murderer but not a sociopath. And basically she commits 3 murders, right, throughout her life. And then she gets married, she's with her husband, and her husband's name is Jason, and he ends up dying. And basically she's then accused of murdering her husband and then the other 3 people. And she's like, no, I didn't kill my husband. So she's trying to like prove her innocence of not killing her husband. And this book is, I think this book will be enjoyable. I enjoyed this book because it took me out of my reading slump. I finished this like in a day. But I think you can enjoy this book if you turn off your brain. Like if you think way too hard about it, like how is that possible? How is she a murderer but she's not a sociopath? Like she's a serial killer, like stuff like that, right? How is it possible that she likes animals but then like she doesn't hurt them but she likes killing people? I think you just need to turn off your brain and just read the book and just read it. Like don't think too hard about it, and I think you can enjoy this book, because if you do think a little bit too hard about it, then you're like, you know. But I did enjoy this book, and also the cover is very beautiful, so I think that's what initially brought me to this book, and then plus, you know, the description of it. But I believe I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I think I gave it 4 when I finished reading it, because it did take me out of my slump and I had like a fun time reading it. But I think now that I'm thinking back on it, maybe I'll give it like 3 out of 5. But basically you're just taken through the story of like from her life, throughout her life, from like every time she killed somebody, you know, like the reason why and like how, you know. So yeah. The next book that I read was The Layover by Lacey Waldon. This was on my TBR because I was in the mood for like a summer like romance book. So basically what this book is about is after 10 years of being a flight assistant, Ava Green is ready to hang up her wings. Her last flight will be heading into Belize. She's determined to enjoy it, but current enemy Jack Stone will be her co-flight assistant. She can't stand him. Also, her plane has mechanical issues, so the flight is delayed in Belize. She now has to spend time in beautiful Belize with her enemy Jack. I don't know, the whole reason why she was like considering him as an enemy and she hated him, I think it was just kind of, I don't know. I don't think it was a big reason as to why they're enemies, you know, especially if it was more like one-sided at the time. Like, and I don't want to get into spoilers, but it didn't really hit the spot for me, like, oh, like a cute little love story. 3 out of 5, that's all I can say. It was like a meh book. The next book I read was The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. So this one's actually a thriller, mystery, and it's an adult book. It's basically about Casey, who she's an actress, and she's spending time in her lake house, and she befriends her neighbor across the lake, Catherine. And basically Catherine's telling her some like stuff about her relationship with this tech guy, her husband, and seems like things are not going well between them, and then they become friends. And then one day Catherine just vanishes. She disappears, and Casey is out to solve the mystery of what happened to Catherine. Like, did Tom do something to her? Like, what happened? This book was okay. It started off interesting. The plot itself, the idea of it was interesting, but I think in the long run, I think I gave this book, I gave this book a 2.5. I put 2.5, maybe 3, I don't know. It started off okay, you know, like the mystery at the beginning was okay, and you always know Riley Sager has a twist at the end of every single book. I honestly did not see the twist coming, which I liked that I didn't see it coming, but I don't know how I feel about the ending overall and exactly what happened. When things get revealed, there are certain things that made me think, wait, then why did this happen? Wait, then why did they say this? Wait, why this? Like, you know? And I think that's what took me out of the enjoyment of this book. I wasn't expecting this book to go this way, but in a way, I guess it's good because people would not have seen it coming. And at the same time, I don't know how I felt about it. I still don't know how I feel about it. I probably would give it a 2.53. I still don't know. This next book is actually one of my favorites of this year so far, and it is Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak. Okay, so I actually listened to this on audiobook because this was not anywhere near my TBR list. But then I was like, you know what? I had nothing to read, nothing to listen to, so I was like, I'm gonna give this book a try. And it was actually narrated by Susie Jackson, and she did such an amazing job. I think she kept me really immersed in this story. And also, like, Jason's story overall was really good. I really like this story. So this book is about Mallory, and she becomes a babysitter for Caroline and Ted. Okay, so she becomes a babysitter for these people, and they have a boy named Teddy, and you know, she's just babysitting, and then Teddy just draws, you know, and then all of a sudden just Teddy starts drawing about a man dragging a body into the forest, and Mallory is just like taken aback, you know. So she thinks something like happened, like maybe Teddy witnessed a murder, like there's a murder that happened in this house or something, but she's determined to find out why Teddy keeps drawing these really creepy drawings. Okay, and I love this book. I give this book 5 out of 5. The characters are very interesting. Each had their own personality. The main character, Mallory, was a joy to follow around. The plot was interesting and kept me intrigued all throughout. The narrator was great. She did a great job, did amazing. I figured out the mystery just before it was revealed, just wasn't sure how. There were about 2 things that didn't make sense. I'm not gonna like say what because it contains spoilers, but there was 2 things that didn't really make sense to me after like I finished reading the book. I was like, wait, then why this? Wait, then why? Like, this makes sense. Like, they literally said something and then literally like the next time it's like, oh, like, just kidding. Like, I don't know. But 5 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. I really liked the atmosphere, the story, the setup, like where it took place. I loved the characters. They were interesting. I loved it. I definitely recommend, and I definitely see myself like re-listening to this book. I actually listened to this on audiobook, but I loved it so much that I actually bought this book physically because I wanted to have it in my collection. We have The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, and this takes place in the aftermath of the Mexican War of Independence, and we have our character Beatrice, who her father is executed and she's left with her mom and some of her other family members, but the family members like mistreat her and her mom, and Beatrice is like, I don't want this life for me. So then when Rodolfo comes by, she is like, I'm gonna marry that man because that man has power. And she marries him, and she thinks she will have a sanctuary at his hacienda, which is called San Isidro. So they go, and it's like the complete opposite of a sanctuary because there's people who like will not enter the house after dark, and she doesn't know why. There's people who will burn sage and like draw like symbols to like keep that area clean, and she's having nightmares. So it's basically a haunted house story. This is a goth story. It's a goth story, and I really enjoyed this book. I was more of giving it a 3.5, but I found myself giving it a 4. Now that I'm thinking about it, I will give it a 4. I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed the characters a lot. We have Rodolfo's sister, Juana. She does not get along with Beatrice. and I kind of wish there was a little bit more of interaction between these two characters, you know. But I really did like it, and I would recommend. The book was giving me vibes like nightmare dreams, kind of creepy because the house is haunted. I like Beatrice as a main character. The others were also very good. I liked there's a character named Paloma, but like if you read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Wish we could have seen more interaction between Beatrice and Juana. Juana is her husband, Beatrice's husband's sister. They don't get along, you know. But instead we get kind of told that like how they are, like they just don't get along. But I kind of wish we could see more interaction between them two. There's a guy named Adrian in this book, and he's basically the priest that Beatrice seeks out help to help her with this home. And I really loved their interactions. I liked their relationship between characters. I really liked the sad reality of power-hungry situations, or what power does to people, like what they do with power or because they have power. That's also one of the concepts I picked up on this book. It's more about power. Like Beatrice, she's being mistreated at home, so she seeks out power, you know, be her own woman, her own person. Then we have Juana, and then we have Rodolfo, and I think they're very interesting concepts in this book. I won't get into like how and why and all this stuff, but if you read this book, I think it's an interesting concept to like think about the power hungry or power wanting subject, you know, basically about power, what you do with power, what you do to obtain it and how to keep it, what you do with it, how you treat people, like, you know. I think it was very interesting. I liked it, and I think one of the concept is what making me give it a 4 out of 5 instead of like a 3.5. There's some things that I was like, man, you know, but overall I really did like the story, so I'll give it a 4. Then we have Breathless by Amy Mccullock. I'm sorry if I mispronounced stuff, okay? I probably should really do a lot of research of pronunciations. But this book was meh, you know. At the time I gave it a 4 out of 5 because I enjoyed it, but now I'm thinking back on it, I'll probably give it a 3 out of 5. So it's basically about a journalist who gets invited to an expedition to a mountain, Nepal. I can't remember what the mountain's name. Manaslu. And it's the 8th highest peak in the world, and she's there to interview a champion of mountain climbing. His name is Charles, and basically there's like a mystery because the climber dies, and like strange things start happening on this mountain expedition. She's trying to like solve it, you know, she's a journalist, she's trying to solve what's happening, but she's also trying to interview this Charles guy. Overall, this book, it was like meh. The mystery in this book is not that great, I'm letting you know. Like, I figured out within like the beginning of the story. I'm like, of course, oh yeah, what a coincidence, like, you know. Not all of it, but the story itself, I think it was okay. I think I liked this book because I was reading about an expedition to the mountain. I like the journey to the top of the peak of this mountain more than the mystery. Like the mystery, I think it was just like it fell flat, and like it wasn't interesting, it was predictable, but I liked the journey to the top of the mountain. So I think that's the only reason why I enjoyed this book. Other than that, it was like meh, you know, whatever, moving on. I also read The Island by Adrian McKinty, and I think I gave this book a 4 out of 5 at the time, but now I'm thinking back on it, I'm just probably gonna give it a 3 because it is pretty forgettable. I'm trying to remember this book at the moment, but I can't really remember. I just know that it takes place in Australia, and there's this family, and they go on a ferry to this island that they're not supposed to go to, and then something happens, now they're stuck in this island and they have to fight to survive. 3 out of 5. I'm not gonna get too much into this book review because it was just, thinking about it now, I'm just like, it was a meh book. It's like whatever, you know. But I am still gonna watch the series. I think it's coming out on Hulu. I don't remember when, but I am interested to see how they make this into, you know, an adaptation. But moving on, 3 out of 5 for The Island. Let's keep it rolling. Next book I read was Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, and this is a book about We have three sisters, but we have Claire, Lydia, and Julia. And Julia actually died like 2 decades ago, so now it's just Claire and Lydia. And they're not very close, okay? And they can't seem to recover about the disappearance about their sister Julia. And then when Claire's husband dies, they're brought into like their past, and you know, it says the vanishing of a teenage girl and the killing of a middle-aged man, almost a quarter century apart, what could connect them? If it, you know, maybe their sister is alive, or they're trying to figure out what happened to her, okay, to their sister Julia. And basically, this book is a very dark book. I'm just letting you guys know, like, trigger warnings all over the fucking screen, all over the fucking place. It's a very dark themed book. Like, when I was listening to this book, I was like, oh my god, like, what am I listening to? And then this book made me very paranoid, because I do believe like shit like this happens in real life. And you know, it does happen. Like, there's sick things happening in this world, and it makes me scared. Like, what if I fall victim to one of these things? And it's just very scary to think about, like, you know, missing women, missing men, you know, like, maybe they go through this. Like, my voice kind of like shaky, because after I read this book, I was very, very paranoid. I'd be like, oh my god, like, I did not want to like leave my house, and be like, maybe I'm just safer stuck inside my house like forever, because if I go out, something might happen to me. I might just vanish, and like, you know, where people are gonna look for me, you know. And I gave this book, I think I give this book a 4 out of 5, only because it was way too brutal. Or maybe I'd give it a 5, I don't know. I'm stuck, because I would not reread this book, because it was very heavy. Trigger warnings. There's rape, there's torture, there's torture, rape. I don't know, but there's so many trigger warnings about this all over the place. But yeah, I think it was a really good book though. Well written, very dark theme though. Then we have The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This was also one of my most anticipated books of the year, and it's basically about, we have Carlota, we have Montgomery, and the hybrids. Those are like our main characters in the story, and they live in this place with the Dr. Moreau, right? And basically there's just like, everything's peaceful, you know. Carlota is the daughter of Dr. Moreau, and then when we have Montgomery, he is a alcoholic, and he's basically an outcast, and he helps Dr. Moreau and his assistants, and he just takes care of the hacienda. And then we have the hybrids. They're the outcomes, the experiments of Dr. Moreau, and they live here, like, you know, and they all live in secret, and everything's like peaceful. But then we have Eduardo Lizalde, who comes and he stirs shit up, and Eduardo Lizalde is actually the son of Dr. Moreau's boss. So the boss comes, the son of the boss comes, and he just creates a chain of reactions of a series of events. And basically, I gave this book, I believe I gave this a 4 out of 5. We have 2 points of views in the story. We have Carlota and we have Montgomery. And my favorite character in this whole book is Montgomery. Honestly, I loved Montgomery's character in this book. My favorite would be Montgomery. I think he has so much depth and personality, kind of creepy too at times. I'm not gonna say this sentence because it is kind of a spoiler. When Montgomery is in a scene, he steals the show. I believe this 100%. Whenever Montgomery was in the story or in the scene that you're reading, he just stole the show for me. Like, he has so much depth and personality. He gets so much background. Like, he gets a background story, and it helps you know why he is the way that he is, what he went through, like what happened to him, and like why he is like the way he is now, and the things that he does. He's an amazing character, well written character. Even though Carlota, I feel like she's also well, she is also the main character. I feel like she is beneath Montgomery here. Like, she has some depth, but she's not quite there. She's just there because she's the daughter of the doctor. But Montgomery, honestly, whenever the chapter like changed and we're going back into his point of view, I loved it. I could write a whole freaking essay about him. Like, okay, if I was in school or somebody told me, okay, write an essay about a character, and I'd be like, I know exactly who I'm picking. I'm picking Montgomery in this book because amazing. I know I'm just going on and on about him, but he's just that good. So it wasn't a bad book, so I give it a 4 out of 5. I did enjoy it, but Montgomery really made me give it a 4. Or if there was no Montgomery in this, I probably would give it a 3. But yeah. Also, the cover is beautiful. I mean, look at it. It's beautiful. We have The Favor by Nora Murphy. And this is a thriller, fiction, suspense, and is an adult book. All these books that I'm mentioning are adult books, FYI. I really like this book. So what this one is about, it says, Leah and McKenna never met, though they have parallel lives. Leah is in an abusive relationship and feels like it's too late for her to leave. But when she notices McKenna, who is heading down the same path, she tries to help her since she can't help herself. So it's basically about 2 women being in abusive relationships, and the sad fact is that people do go through this in real life in some scenario, you know, maybe not this exact same scenario, but I think this book was really well done and executed. I liked the story. I liked the things that happened in this book. Let's just say I really did like the way it ended as well. So this book is about abusive relationships. Like, we follow 2 points of view. Leah and McKenna really like this book, and the 2 main characters, we get some backstory of the characters, not a whole lot, but just some. Though we do get a backstory on how each couple met and how the partner slowly started changing after marriage. I really liked it. I finished it in one day, liked the ending a lot as well. Author's note was good to read about. Shines light on the fact that abusive relationships don't start with red flags. Mentioned in story 2, there was no red flags or behavior that gave warnings as to what was to come. How people think, just leave, but it's easier said than done. Sometimes when women speak out, there is no justice, nor are they believed. She gives resources for people experiencing abuse with their partner, and I think that was a really good. I actually gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I definitely recommend. I like this book. This next book is Illegally Yours by Rafael Agustin, and this is a memoir. And Rafael Agustin is a writer on Jane the Virgin. So I picked up this book, not really knowing who he was, but I did like Google it. It's about Rafael, and he was born in Ecuador, and his parents were doctors in Ecuador, but then they had to move to the United States, and we go through his life of what it was like moving to America, first living in Ecuador, and then moving to America, and then actually living there and everything that he went through. Very well written book, a lot of inspiration from movies because Rafael loved movies and would associate America with these huge iconic characters. Writes about what many people come to America for, to be successful, that's the reason, to be successful. Writes about the way of living and hardships of being undocumented. He was undocumented, and so he goes through what that was like and everything he had to do and avoid being caught, you know. There's a paragraph on page 31 of his parents' dreams of becoming doctors in America. They were doctors in Ecuador. It's heartbreaking. This is the quote. It's heartbreaking to think that they were never able to become doctors in the United States, because the greatest lesson my parents ever learned in this country is that the American dream is not for you, but for your children. And I think that kind of like really hits the mark. It is the children who are going to blossom. I mean, if you move, like, the parents could succeed too, but a lot of times more than not, it's the children who will succeed you, who will like go and flourish, I guess. I don't know how to describe it without getting too like into detail into the subject of immigration, but I love immigration books. I love the story. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars, and I definitely recommend. Another very heavy book, dark themed book, is The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. This is a thriller, it is a mystery, and it's an adult book. So it's about, while in college in New York, Shay Evans and her friends meet a man who seduces them and takes them under his wing. Senior year, Shay and her friend Laurel are the only ones to escape. 8 years later, Shay discovers that Laurel died through her favorite podcast. With the help of the podcast host, she must find out what happened to Laurel by returning to New York. This book is very, very dark theme. The book actually does contain trigger warnings at the beginning, and some of these trigger warnings are it contains suicide, rape, physical violence, sexual violence, trauma, self-harm, misogyny, gender essentialism, and drug use. So I definitely, if you're not into very dark themed heavy books, or like any of those trigger warnings, books that contain those trigger warnings, I definitely do not recommend this book. But it is about a cult. It's a cult book, okay? And that's what brought me to this book, was the fact that it's about a cult. But it's a very dark themed book about a cult, okay? It gave me anxiety, many scenes that made me uncomfortable. Definitely not a book for everyone. Story was interesting and executed well. Was interested from beginning to end. Liked the way Shay explained her past. Was in interview form. Yeah, so she explains her past to her podcast friend through an interview format. And usually I don't like books that contain interview formats or any of sort of that, but I think it was very well done in this book and it fit. So I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 because, why? Oh, because of how much anxiety it gave me. I wrote that, but I don't know. I don't know, it just feels like a 4.5 out of 5, you know? But I do feel like maybe I do want to give it a 5 stars now that I'm thinking about it. But I'm still between 4.5 or 5. It just feels like a 4.5 book. But I feel like it should be a 5-star book, you know? But I do recommend, if you don't mind very dark themed books or any of those trigger warnings. But if you don't, then don't read it. But I really liked it. This next book that I read was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, and I've been meaning to read this book for a very long time, but every time I picked it up, I would just put it right back down. So I decided to listen to the audiobook, and I am so glad I listened to this audiobook, and it is narrated by Polly Stone. She did an amazing job narrating this book. I recommend the audiobook. The genre is a historical fiction, and it's about 2 sisters and their journey trying to survive in France when occupied by Nazis in World War II. Vianne and her daughter Sophie must live with a Nazi and their journey to survive. Isabel, the youngest sister, she's 18, joins a resistance group to save lives and oppose Nazis. I loved this book from beginning to end. It was just interesting. Their stories were well written and it just flows very well. I love the characters. They have so much personality to them, and you can like literally like depict each sister in this book. Like, oh, this is Isabel, oh, this is Vienna. Like, you can even say Sophie, and you can see the friend Rachel. Like, it's really good. I definitely recommend. If you're not into historical fiction but you want to get into at least maybe one, I would definitely recommend The Nightingale. And if you're not into reading it, I definitely recommend the audiobook. That's what I did, and I loved it. Let's see. Both sister stories are interesting. I was all for it from beginning to end. Loved the personalities and the characters, well written, and I was immersed into their lives. I felt like I was in the story. I really did feel like I was like spectating them. Like I was like third person. Like I felt like I was in their world. The way Kristen Hanna describes like their world, like where they're living, you know, like Paris, I felt like I could see it. Like I was imagining it perfectly in my head. Like I was there. Everything described in this book, I can still imagine seeing Vianne's house and Isabel in the mountains. Very sad book too. The things that occurs are tragic and hard to think about because this did happen. It is a World War II historical fiction book. So of course, when you think about World War II, you think about all the sad stuff that happened, and some of that is depicted in this book. but I definitely recommend, and I'm definitely going to watch the adaptation. I think, I forgot the sisters' names. I think it's like Dakota Fanning and her sister. That one girl who plays Aurora and Maleficent. They're gonna be the sisters in the adaptation, but I will definitely pitch in. I would definitely be tuning in for the adaptation, and I believe it comes out in 2023. I don't really remember, but I will be watching. Book 5 out of 5 stars. Definitely recommend. The Blame Game by Sandy Jones, and this book was a waste of time. I'm just saying it right now. I give this book a 1 out of 5 stars. It was terrible. So it's about Naomi, a psychologist who specializes in domestic abuse. She helps her client Jacob leave her his wife. Then Jacob goes missing and she must find out what happened. This book was just so boring. The mystery itself, it was like okay, like the idea of it is okay, but when it's actually executing, you get to the end of the book and you actually find out what happens, I'm just like, this is not interesting at all. My cat just scared me. Cookie freaking scared me. Whoo. Welcome back. Okay, this book was a waste of time. 1 out of 5 stars. I just kept writing about how boring this book was. I can't even recall the ending well. Who was to blame? I got lost or didn't care enough to go back and reread. Most things in this book were forgetful and pointless. Waste of time. That's all I have to say. Okay, moving on. Then I was in the mood to read a romance. Oh yeah, Cookie. I was in the mood to read a romance, so I read The Secret Bridesmaid by Katie Birchall. I love this book, okay? I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5. It's not really romance heavy based, but it's more of like drama based, you know? So let me tell you what this book is about. Sophie is a professional bridesmaid and she poses as a friend of the bride, but behind the scenes, she helps plan the wedding. She then gets hired to be this bridesmaid by the, I can't say this word, Marchioness? So she gets hired by the Marchioness for her daughter, Lady Cordelia. Cordelia is determined to make Sophie's life a nightmare. Sophie then ends up falling for Lady Cordelia's brother, Tom. So Cordelia is actually like, Lady Cordelia is like an ass and she's always being mean to Sophie. And basically you get to see these interactions between these two because they have to like work together and be together to plan this wedding, this big wedding, because like, you know, everybody's tuning in because it's Lady Cordelia who's getting married. And I loved this book because of the back and forth between Cordelia and Sophie. So I wrote, this book was so much fun to read. I had a blast reading about the challenges Lady Cordelia gave to Sophie. I loved Sophie's character and Cordelia's character. Author delivered on making them the stars of the show. Book was more of a drama than romance. I actually had forgotten it was a romance book because a romance happens more at the halfway point. The romance was meh, felt a little forced due to plot. Enjoyed the drama more, not a deal breaker though. It added to the book a little. And this book actually reminds me of The Devil Wears Prada. So if you like The Devil Wears Prada, I definitely think you should read this book. And it's funny because when I actually thought, this book sounds a lot like The Devil Wears Prada, they actually mention it in the book as well. Like Sophie's having a conversation with her friend and her friend's like, wow, it kind of sounds like The Devil Wears Prada. Like, and I was like, oh, that was literally what I was thinking about. But it's totally The Devil Wears Prada vibes. Your boss is just making your job a living nightmare, you know? And it was so much fun. I definitely recommend. So 4 out of 5. So this next book I actually listened to on audiobook, and it's Finley Donovan is Killing It by El Casimano, and it's narrated by Angela Daw. So it's about Finley who meets up with her agent to discuss the plot about her book, only for her conversation to be overheard and mistaken to be a contract killer. Finley accepts the job. So this book was pretty funny, a book just to enjoy, okay, the mess that Finley gets herself into, like the characters, the plot, and the mini mystery. The narrator did a good job. Liked the voice she used for the babysitter. I forgot the babysitter's name, but I really liked that babysitter's the voice that she made for it, and I liked the character too a lot. And this book was so fun. I definitely think this is a book you should read after you're reading a very dark, heavy themed book, or like you just want like a fun little read, definitely Finlay Donovan is killing it. I would recommend, and I give this book a 5 out of 5 stars. But now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it's just a 4 out of 5. I don't know, it just feels like a 4 out of 5. This last book, I actually got it from my library and I just returned it, and it is Just Like Home by Sarah Galey. And the only reason why I read this book was because it is Gabby Reed's YouTube channel book troop for the month of October. This book is about Vera, and her dad was a serial killer when she was a child, but then he goes away, and now we're in the present day. She goes back to his house because her mom is like dying. Honestly, this book was very, very, very boring. Okay, the concept was very interesting, but the book was just so boring. I was bored out of my mind. Like, I try to like force myself to read one chapter every day, but I just could not do it. The only thing that I liked about this book was the ending. Okay, the ending made it up for me. This book is a 1 star, but the ending, I think maybe I would give it a 2 stars, but then I think back on how bored I was and I'd probably just go back to 1 star. But basically Vera just goes to the house, and then she just like goes around the house cleaning and like finds notes, and then she just like thinks about her feelings. That's basically this book is all about. And the only chapters I liked was when she was a child, and what she like, the memory she had with her father, and you know what when you know, I started getting like more creepier, and I was like, okay, now it's starting to pick up. So this book definitely picks up at the end mark of the book, probably like 85% of the book through it picks up, and I was very invested in the ending. And I liked the ending because I did not see the ending coming, but it was very different and I liked it. I liked the ending, okay? It was very weird and creepy, but I liked it. But the rest of the book was so boring. I would not reread this book again. And those are all the books I read throughout these months, and I hope you guys liked the books I liked, and if you didn't, just let me know, or let me know what your thoughts about some of these books. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a lovely day.